Welcome to the Timeless Mind, your ultimate source for bite-sized wisdom from the most powerful books ever written.
Yes.
If you've ever wanted to absorb life-changing lessons from classic books without spending hours reading,
Yeah.
you're in the right place.
Absolutely.
This is Series 1, Episode 11, Mastering Effectiveness, the 7 Habits That Transform Lives.
Yes.
Focusing on Stephen Covey's incredibly influential book.
Um,
Let's dive in.
Before we jump into these habits,
Okay.
but the thing that really struck me about Covey's approach
Yeah.
is this idea that real change starts from the inside out.
Okay.
He argues that it's not about just trying to change our behavior with a bunch of quick fix techniques.
It's more about examining those deeper paradigms, right?
Mm.
Like the way we see the world. It almost feels like you're upgrading the operating system of your mind.
That's a great analogy.
Okay.
And Covey presents these 7 habits as a kind of roadmap to help us make that upgrade. What's fascinating is that he sees it as a journey of growth.
Right.
Moving from dependence to independence.
Ultimately to interdependence.
So we start off relying on others.
Right.
Then we learn to stand on our own 2 feet.
Exactly.
And finally, we reach this level where we can achieve true synergy by working together.
That's right.
I'm already intrigued. It's like a maturity continuum. But Covey also emphasizes
Yeah.
that it's not just about what we do,
Right.
but who we are at our core.
He talks about the difference between character ethic and personality ethic.
Exactly. He argues that focusing on superficial charm and quick fixes, that personality ethic
Right.
might give you temporary wins.
Okay.
But true effectiveness stems from building character based on principles. Things like integrity,
Yeah.
fairness, honesty.
Right.
These are the bedrock of lasting success.
That makes me think of how some students cram for a test to pass, but they don't actually absorb the material. It's not real learning.
That's exactly what Covey warns against. He actually uses this vivid analogy. He says relying solely on personality techniques is like cramming for a farm harvest.
You reap what you sow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
No shortcuts to a bountiful harvest.
Right.
And no shortcuts to a fulfilling life.
Precisely. He even calls this the law of the harvest. True, lasting growth happens when we align ourselves with natural principles, just like a farmer tending their crops.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got this inside-out approach,
Yeah.
this focus on character,
Right.
and this idea of a maturity continuum leading to interdependence. Now, I'm really curious to unpack these 7 habits. What's the first one?
Habit 1, be proactive.
Okay.
I think this one goes deeper than just taking initiative.
You're absolutely right. Being proactive in Covey's framework goes beyond just taking action. It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to any given situation.
Right.
It's about taking responsibility for our own lives rather than blaming external circumstances or other people for our problems.
So it's about focusing on what we can control.
Yes.
Not just what we're worried about. That reminds me of Covey's circles of concern and influence, right?
Exactly. A circle of concern includes all those things that we might worry about but have little control over, while the circle of influence encompasses those things we can actually do something about. Proactive people focus their energy on that inner circle.
You know, this reminds me of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Even in a concentration camp,
Wow.
he wrote about finding a sense of freedom by choosing his attitude in the face of unimaginable suffering.
That's such a powerful example of proactivity in action.
Yeah.
Despite horrific circumstances, Frankl chose to focus on what he could control. His thoughts, his beliefs, his values.
Okay, so we've got to be proactive.
Yeah.
Focus on our circle of influence.
Right.
That's a powerful starting point. What's the next step on this journey of effectiveness?
It's habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. Have you ever felt lost in life?
Oh, absolutely.
Like you were working really hard but not getting anywhere?
I think a lot of us have felt that way at some point.
This habit is all about having a clear vision of where you want to go in life. Covey emphasizes what he calls 2 creations, mental then physical. He argues that everything is created twice, first in our minds and then in the real world.
So before you build a house, you need the blueprints, right?
Exactly. Or before you start a business, you need a solid business plan.
Yeah.
And for our own lives,
Right.
this means having a clear mental picture of what we want to achieve.
Right.
What kind of person we want to be.
Right.
What kind of impact we want to have on the world.
That's where a personal mission statement comes in.
Exactly.
Like a personal constitution that guides your decisions and keeps you on track.
That's exactly it. And by having that clear end in mind,
Yeah.
we can make sure that our daily actions are aligned with our values and our long-term goals.
So we're being proactive.
Right.
We've got a clear vision.
Mm-hmm.
We're focusing on the right things. What's habit 3 all about?
Habit 3 is all about action. It's called put first things first. It's about making sure our actions align with those priorities we just talked about.
So it's like translating that big vision from habit 2 into daily action.
Right.
But how do we actually prioritize when there are so many demands on our time and attention?
That's where Covey introduces a really helpful tool. The 4 quadrants of time management.
Okay.
Imagine a square divided into 4 sections. Quadrant 1 is for urgent and important tasks, like
Okay.
crises and deadlines. Quadrant 2 is for important but not urgent activities, like
Right.
planning relationship building and personal development.
Uh-huh.
Quadrant 3 is for urgent but not important things,
Right.
like interruptions and some meetings. And Quadrant 4 is for activities that are neither urgent nor important, basically, time wasters.
I've definitely spent way too much time in quadrants 3 and 4. So I'm guessing the key here is to spend more time in quadrant 2.
You got it.
Okay.
But here's the thing. We so often get caught up in the urgency of Quadrant 1, and then we get distracted by the things in Quadrant 3.
Right.
That we neglect those crucial Quadrant 2 activities that actually move us toward our goals.
It's like you're always putting out fires, but never actually building anything meaningful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Covey shares this fascinating anecdote about a group of shopping center managers
Okay.
who dramatically increased their effectiveness by focusing on Quadrant 2 activities.
Really? I'm surprised that spending less time on day-to-day management led to better results. Could you elaborate on that?
What's fascinating here is that they actually achieved better results by focusing on things like building stronger relationships with their tenants, which seems counterintuitive, but makes perfect sense in light of the Quadrant 2 principle.
Okay, so habits 1 through 3 seem to be about achieving independence,
Right.
like taking responsibility for our lives, setting a clear vision,
Yes.
and managing ourselves effectively. But what about that interdependence you mentioned earlier? Where does that fit in?
That's where the next 4 habits come in. But before we dive into those,
Okay.
Covey introduces a concept that is absolutely crucial for building effective,
Right.
interdependent relationships.
Right.
The emotional bank account. It's one of the most memorable parts of the book.
The emotional bank account. Okay, now you've got my attention. What is that exactly?
Think of it like a financial bank account.
Okay.
But instead of money, we're dealing with trust. Every interaction we have with another person is either a deposit or a withdrawal.
So things like kindness,
Right.
honesty, keeping commitments,
Yes.
those are deposits.
Exactly.
And things like being disrespectful or breaking promises would be withdrawals.
Exactly. And just like with a financial bank account,
Yeah.
if we make consistent deposits,
Right.
we build up a reserve of trust. And that trust makes communication easier,
Yeah.
more open,
Yeah.
and more effective. It creates a feeling of safety,
Right.
of knowing that the other person has your best interests at heart.
What happens when the account gets overdrawn?
Well, it leads to defensiveness,
Right.
suspicion,
Okay.
miscommunication,
Yeah.
and conflict. Every interaction becomes a potential minefield.
I can see how this applies to any relationship,
Right.
from personal to
Yeah.
professional.
Exactly.
Okay, so we need to be mindful of those deposits and withdrawals in our interactions with others. Now, I'm really curious to see how this emotional bank account concept ties into those habits of interdependence.
It's incredibly important. Think of it as the foundation for everything that comes next. Without trust,
Yeah.
those habits become empty techniques,
Right.
manipulation, rather than genuine collaboration.
Right.
So let's move on to habit 4 and see how it all comes together.
All right, habit 4. Let's hear it.
Habit 4 is all about think win-win. It's about approaching interactions with the belief that there's a solution out there that benefits everyone involved.
So it's not about one person coming out on top at the expense of the other. It's about collaboration and finding solutions where everyone benefits. I think a lot of us are conditioned to think in terms of win-lose, though. It's ingrained in our competitive culture.
You're absolutely right. And Covey acknowledges that He actually outlines 6 different paradigms of human interaction: win-win, win-lose, lose-win, lose-lose, win, and win-win or no deal.
Okay, let's break those down. We've talked about win-win, but what about win-lose? That seems pretty straightforward. One
Yeah.
person gets what they want and the other person loses out.
Exactly. And lose-win is the flip side of that coin. It's where you're so focused on pleasing the other person that you sacrifice your own needs and desires. You become a doormat.
And then there's lose-lose, which sounds pretty bleak.
It is. This is where both parties end up losing, often because they're so caught up in getting revenge or proving a point that they miss the bigger picture. They cut off their nose to spite their face.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about win? That one seems a bit different.
Yeah, this one is all about getting what you want, regardless of the impact on others. It's a very self-centered approach, and it doesn't really factor in the needs or well-being of the other person.
Got it. So it's not really about collaboration or building strong relationships. And finally, what is win-win or no deal?
This is a powerful one. It essentially means that if we can't find a solution that benefits both of us, we agree to walk away. It's about having the courage to say no if the terms aren't right for everyone involved.
That takes a lot of self-respect and awareness. It prevents you from getting stuck in a situation that ultimately doesn't serve anyone. So I'm starting to see how powerful this win-win philosophy can be, but I imagine it takes a certain level of maturity and emotional security to truly embrace it.
You're hitting on a key point here. Covey emphasizes that you need 3 key character traits to operate from a win-win paradigm: integrity, maturity, and an abundance mentality.
Okay, I'm all ears. Break those down for me.
Well, integrity is about being true to your values and commitments. It's about walking the talk. Maturity, in Covey's definition, is about finding the balance between courage and consideration. It's having the confidence to express your own views while also being respectful of the perspectives of others. And an abundance mentality is the belief that there's enough success and happiness to go around. It's the opposite of a scarcity mindset, where you see someone else's win as your loss.
So with an abundance mentality, you can actually celebrate the success of others without feeling threatened.
Exactly. It's a much more empowering and fulfilling way to live.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork with habit 4, which is all about seeking mutually beneficial solutions. Now let's move on to habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
This one seems like it's all about communication, but it's probably deeper than just talking or even just actively listening, right?
You're right on the mark. It's about empathic listening. It's about truly understanding the other person's perspective before you even try to make yourself understood. I think this can be a real challenge for many of us. It's so easy to get caught up in our own thoughts and feelings, especially when we're in a conflict or disagreement. We often listen with the intent to reply rather than with the intent to truly understand.
Absolutely. And we miss so much when we do that. We're so focused on formulating our own response that we miss crucial nuances in what the other person is saying and feeling.
You know, it's kind of like that famous optical illusion of the young woman, old woman. Depending on your perspective, you see one or the other. It takes a real shift in thinking to see both.
That's a perfect analogy. Covey actually uses that illusion to illustrate how our paradigms or deeply held beliefs and assumptions can really shape our perception of reality.
So to truly understand another person, we have to be willing to step outside of our own paradigm and see the world through their eyes.
Precisely. It takes humility, curiosity, and a genuine desire to connect. It's about making those deposits into that emotional bank account by showing respect and a willingness to truly listen.
Okay, so we're seeking to understand and then to be understood. I love how these habits build upon each other. What comes next?
Habit 6 is where the magic of interdependence really comes alive. It's called synergize.
Synergy. Now that's a word I haven't heard in a while. I remember from science class. It's when the combined effect of two things is greater than the sum of their individual parts.
That's exactly it. And in the context of human interaction, it's about creative cooperation, where people with different perspectives and ideas come together to create something truly innovative and extraordinary.
So it's not about compromise or finding the middle ground. It's about going beyond that to find solutions that neither person could have come up with on their own. It's about 1 + 1 = 3.
Exactly. Covey gives a great example of a couple trying to plan a vacation. They initially have very different ideas about where they want to go and what they want to do, but through respectful communication and a willingness to understand each other's desires, they come up with a plan that is even better than either of their original ideas.
That's such a great example of how synergy can lead to those win-win solutions we were talking about earlier. It's like instead of arguing over which movie to watch, you end up creating an entirely new genre of film together.
I love that analogy. And Covey also emphasizes the importance of what he calls intrapersonal synergy, meaning achieving balance within ourselves.
So before we can effectively synergize with others, we need to have a sense of internal harmony and integration. It's that inside-out approach again.
Yes, and this internal synergy is closely tied to those first three habits. When we're proactive, have a clear vision, and manage ourselves effectively, we create a strong foundation for effective collaboration with others.
It seems like these 7 habits really build upon each other, creating an upward spiral of growth and effectiveness.
They do. And finally, we arrive at habit 7, sharpen the saw.
Sharpen the saw. Okay, I'm intrigued. What's that all about?
This habit is all about renewal. It's about taking care of ourselves so that we can continue to grow and improve in all areas of our lives. It's like giving yourself a mental and physical tune-up.
So it's about maintaining and enhancing the other 6 habits. It's about making sure we're in top shape so we can continue to be effective in all areas of our lives.
Exactly. Covey breaks down renewal into 4 dimensions: physical, spiritual, mental, and social emotional.
So, taking care of our physical health, connecting with our inner selves, continuing to learn and grow, and nurturing our relationships with others. It's about finding balance and making sure no one area is neglected.
You got it. He emphasizes that neglecting any one of these dimensions will negatively impact the others.
That's like a car. You can't just focus on keeping the engine running. You've got to make sure the tires are inflated, the oil is changed, and all the other systems are functioning properly. Or else, sooner or later, something's going to break down.
That's a great analogy. And just like regular maintenance helps a car run smoothly and efficiently, habit 7 helps us stay sharp, energized, and effective in all areas of our lives.
This whole idea of sharpening the saw really resonates with me. It's a reminder that self-care isn't selfish. It's essential for our well-being and our effectiveness. It's about investing in ourselves so we can make greater contributions to the world around us.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that our well-being is an essential ingredient for effectiveness.
So we've explored all 7 habits, from being proactive to sharpening the saw. What stands out to you as the most impactful takeaway from Covey's work? What's the golden nugget, so to speak?
For me, it's that powerful emphasis on character and principles as the foundation for lasting effectiveness. It's about being, not just doing.
I completely agree. And it all comes back to that inside-out approach, understanding that true change starts with ourselves, with our own paradigms and choices. It's so easy to get caught up in trying to change other people or our circumstances, but ultimately the only thing that we can truly control is ourselves.
That's the essence of proactivity, and it's a message that resonates throughout Covey's entire book.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground today, from paradigms to principles, from private victories to public victories, from the emotional bank account to sharpening the saw. It's clear that these 7 habits aren't just a quick fix. They're a profound framework for continuous growth and improvement.
And what's remarkable is that they're just as relevant today as they were when Covey first published his book back in 1989. These principles are timeless and universal, applicable to every aspect of our lives.
They really are. So for our listener out there who's ready to take action, what's one thing they can start doing today to apply these principles in their own life?
If I had to choose just one, I'd say start with habit 1. Be proactive. It's the foundation of all the other habits. It's about recognizing that you have the power to choose your response to any situation, to focus on your circle of influence, to be the author of your own life, not just a character reacting to the script someone else has written.
I love that. Be proactive. Take charge of your life. It's a simple message, but incredibly empowering.
And as you start to embrace that proactive mindset, you'll find that the other habits will naturally start to fall into place. You'll see the world differently, you'll make different choices, and ultimately you'll create a more fulfilling and effective life for yourself.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
And we encourage you to pick one of these habits that resonated with you and start applying it in your own life. And as always, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to become the best version of yourself. We'll catch you on our next deep dive into another life-changing book.